Hi everyone, and welcome to today's special conversation on people with special needs. I'm really sorry for the delay, but I thank you all for who have been patiently waiting for us. This is Apurva Sharma, and I'm the co-chair of Inclusivity and Accessibility Vertical of Young Indians Noida. So, why do you think that this conversation is special? This conversation is special because of two reasons. One, because not everyone has the knowledge. And second, not everyone's interested and eager to hear and get involved. But we have decided that we are going to spread awareness about this. So let me ask you a question. Who are persons with special needs or persons with disabilities? Generally, people say anybody who has a mental or physical disability is a person with special needs. But what we forget is that their ability. WHO says that we typecast disability. There are many disabilities which are invisible. Actually, directly or indirectly, we all face some or the other disability in our lifetime. As we age, some or the other disability makes our life a little hard. Anything that does not fit into our frame of ability is a disability. We need to stop doing that. So let me ask you a question again. If you do not know Spanish, does that mean that you're disabled? If you've not climbed the Mount Everest, does that mean you can never do mount climbing and you are disabled again? No, of course not. We need to stop typecasting and stick to our cliches. We need to make sure that we include all the people with special needs and identify their ability so that they can come to their best selves and add them to the mainstream society. Our Honorable Prime Minister has launched the Accessible India campaign, Sugamya Bharat Abhiyan. The aim is to make the physical environment accessible to everyone by removing barriers and obstacles in all facilities, such as schools, medical hospitals, and various other structures. We at Young Indians have decided to take this in our larger ambit of inclusive India. So, what we want with accessibility is the inclusion of people with special needs to our lives so that they can live with full dignity. Today, this conversation of ours is a very small step towards this, and our focus is on clothing. Designing, developing clothing for the special people or persons with disabilities. And for this today, we have our guest, Varija Bajaj. Let me introduce you to her. She wears many hats. She's a fashion designer, she's an interior designer, and most importantly, she's an academician and an innovator. She was named as one of the top 100 innovators by the World CSR Congress. Under her initiative, Varija Life, she has been spreading awareness about persons with disabilities and has initiated research for adaptive clothing for them. So now please welcome Varija. Hi Varija. How are you? Am I audible? One second, just give me a second. I can't really hear you. Just give me a second, please. Just give me a second. Somebody is typing in the audience that Varaja, you're not audible. No, you're still not audible. Just give me a second. Let me just ask the audience if they can hear you. No, you're still not audible. Okay. So, guys, Varija will be joining us back. Meanwhile, let's chat a little more about disability. And I would love comments coming, and let's make it a little more interactive. So, let me ask, have you ever met someone with special needs or disability? We can start answering with a yes, maybe, or a no. One second, guys. Varija is back again. We can start answering with a yes, maybe, or a no.
Hi, am I audible now?
Yes, you are.
Super! Yo,
One
we did
second, guys.
it.
Varija is back again.
But I
We can
think
start
I am
answering with
on
a
two
yes, maybe,
windows
or a
now.
no. You
Hi,
will.
am I audible now?
Yes, you are.
Super! Yo.
Hello.
Super. Is this good?
Yes, this is great.
Oh, finally. Thanks
Okay.
to all the technology that we are getting used to, right?
Yes. Thanks to, I can't thank Corona, but we adapt. That's what we do.
Yes. Yes, we do. Yes, we do.
So I'd like to introduce you once again because I think the audience was going on here and there, and I would like to get their attention back. So, guys, you were really, really lucky that Varija is here with us. And she's a fashion designer. She has three labels, not just one. And she was awarded by Economic Times for it. The one is called Office in You. Then she's an interior designer, academician, and my favorite, an innovator. She was also named in one of the top 100 innovators in the world by the CSR Congress. And she has an initiative under the name of Varija Life, where she's working on awareness on persons with disabilities and has initiated a research on clothing for them. So that's Varaja for you. Welcome, Varaja.
Thank
It's
you. Thank
great to
you.
have you. How are you?
Very well. I think the lockdown is treating all of us in the similar space, right?
Yeah, of course. It's the tech space, I think.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So, Varaja, everyone says what's in a name, but I find the name Varaja Life very interesting.
Hmm.
So, why Varaja Life? What is the idea behind it?
So, Apurva, my brand is called Varija. I am in the apparel space. So it started with Varija Design Studio, which was a very customized space that we were in terms of doing bridal clothing. Then we started something called Varija Home, which is into interiors and architecture, and that's also very customized space that we were in.
Right.
And so when I started doing awareness programs for persons with disabilities and a couple of other community based programs, I think it was all about respecting life and giving that dignity of, a living life. So
Right.
I think it was a natural progression. So Varaja, of course, remained like a prefix, but giving life to people who are otherwise ignored. I think that was the progression how Varaja life happened.
Right. So that's, I think, very important to, include everyone and make everyone feel part of this society. And, happiness at the end of the day is living with everyone. That's what we have recently
Absolutely.
also realized. And
Absolutely.
then, like, of course, achieve things and achieve goals and, have a family and like a holistic living, which can only come when you felt accepted, right?
Absolutely. And I think in today's time, it is even more imperative to understand now that the lockdown is happening and we are feeling that being caged sort of
Right,
space. I
right,
think
right,
it would help you relate even more when you talk about persons with disabilities, how they have not been able to access life
right,
in many
right,
ways. So
right,
I think in a way you're living their life at the moment, just being constrained to your homes, not being able to go out, not being able to do all those things that you just sort of took for granted, going to the
right,
park, going to the malls,
right,
being on
right,
the road, going and socializing and meeting people, because a lot of mental stigma sort of comes in there. So I think in a way it's just a minuscule of their life that we are getting to live right now.
right, right. So, people with disabilities, I think, have less access, not included enough, and you have decided that you're gonna make everyone aware about that and make things accessible for them. And one of the initiatives which you started is on developing a clothing line for them. So I was wanting to know that, what was the trigger? What and when you decided that, you're going to work for this and work for them and make their lives better?
So Apurva, this started about 15 years ago when I got into the apparel sector. I'm not a designer by education, and I started, from a different perspective, because the way I looked at fashion and the way I looked at design was a more scientific approach. And I started decoding the whole science of fashion. So it wasn't a typical fashion design stream that I was coming from. And in the whole process, I sort of started reading and understanding the science of fashion, and I stumbled upon a couple of articles on clothing for persons with disabilities. And I think that's where the trigger thought was that
Right,
if I'm blessed to understand, the clothing needs of people who can speak, I'm probably blessed to understand the needs of the people who cannot speak. And I started researching a lot in that space, and I realized that there was very little literature that was available. So I started visiting the special schools, the Spastic Society of India. There's another one in Hyderabad, and a lot of other special schools. And I just wanted, just out of my pure curiosity as a designer, I just wanted to know that what's happening. And I actually didn't find anything. I visited Ames Library, I visited all the possible libraries in the country, and what I could find were individual researchers of maybe PhD scholars, or one of journals written by an individual as a research report. But there was no consensus in terms of a research which was done by a whole lot of people. So there was a lot of subjectivity in the research that I saw. So I started volunteering myself and going to a special school, trying to understand the clothing needs of persons with disabilities. And that again, just, 2 hours in a week. And purely out of that curiosity that I had as a designer, and purely out of my own passion. Of course, I didn't have any business interest to that. And when I started doing that, I had my own observations, and you'll be surprised. So if I were to ask you a question, so this particular school, it's one of the best known schools here in Delhi. I'll not name that school. So they had this uniform which was red in color. Okay.
Right.
Now, what comes to your mind when you think of color red?
I think of energy, a lot of positive energy.
Right, lot of energy. It just so it's used in common places, in gyms, in activity areas. We don't use color red in our bedrooms, right? So
Right, right.
there's an obvious science behind it, that in your
Yeah.
bedrooms you come to just soothe your energies and you just want to sleep, right? So this particular school, it had its uniform as red, and this was a special school. Now, when we are talking about special school, there are a lot of hyperactive kids also. So, there are various conditions like ADHD, which is a hyperactive condition. So, a lot of ADHD kids are, anyways, hyper mentally, right?
Right.
And here was this child who was absolutely fine at home. He used to be absolutely fine in the car. By the time he would reach school, he would just become extremely aggressive. He would start throwing around the furniture. He would, beat up a few people. And the obvious remedy for that was to go back to therapies. Therapies meant calming his nerves. Therapy meant giving him more tranquilizers so that, he's not so hyperactive. One example. Another example, so the uniforms that you and me wear in schools is it has a very high level of polyester, because we have just those two uniforms that we have to run through the entire week.
Right, right.
So now, what's the you're coming from an apparel background, what is the advantage? The advantage is, of course, it's easy and maintenance free. What is the disadvantage of polyester, if I were to ask you?
It sticks to your body, and it's more irritable.
It's
And
irritable. It doesn't let your skin breathe when you're sweating, right? Again, a hyperactive child who is very aggressive, otherwise, he tends to sweat. And a lot of these children, they have very sensitive skins, if I were to say.
right.
And but he didn't know how to express that.
Hmm.
So he would again be very, very aggressive. He was coming from an affluent background, and he used to be absolutely fine at home. But the moment he would come to school, he would become very aggressive.
Hmm.
Now, at that point, when I went back to the school authorities, they didn't entertain any of this logic, and they said, we know our job well, and you've come here to do the research, so just be limited to that. And I was absolutely nobody in terms of any name or career. I was just starting off, and I was also like, I'm not an NGO, mujhe kya padi hai,
Hmm.
it's a
Right.
job of the government to think about these people, and not that I'm personally affected, nobody in the family is affected.
Hmm.
So,
Hmm.
I also took it back to my ego, and I did my research, and I left it at that. But I think somewhere that guilt always remained, and I knew that I was not in a position to make any difference at that point. But if you were to talk about now, having had a career in fashion, 8, 10 years down the line, when I started teaching in a lot of colleges, and I was impacting students and influencing a lot of students, that's where this guilt came back to me, that here is this knowledge that I have, and I need to give it back. And
Right.
because till date, I am living with that guilt that probably that boy who might be alive today would be still on tranquilizers, because that knowledge has still not reached, to the right resource, to the right
The
sources.
impact hasn't been made. The
Yes.
change, the
And
difference.
I realized that I couldn't have done it individually as a newbie then. But I think now I am in a space that people do listen to what I say. So yeah, so I'm just using that as as my sword.
So you were always motivated, and now your motivation is back again, and you're going on with full force to get on to the research and make a positive change and get things done. I think we've lost Varuja again, so we'll just give her a minute to get on back. So, like she said, meanwhile, that she had done a research, and let me tell you that this area, when we are talking about adaptive clothing or clothing for the disabled, it has really little literature and research has hardly been done. So, going on, like she mentioned, she'd been going on single handedly and collating data and information and trying to make sense out of it. And usually, fashion is taken to be very glamorous. And it's thought that, there is no scientific aspect to it, and there is no science involved in the construction of a garment. But when you look at a garment, there are a lot of technicalities there. And how you wear it on, how you take them off, it affects, especially people with disabilities, it affects them a lot. It makes their life easier or their lives harder. And more on, for them, there is a lot of psychology which is involved when it comes to color. Like she mentioned, when uniforms of red color were being worn by some students at a school, it was energizing them. And then that student had to be tranquilized. So it was a very hard time, I'm sure, for the parents to deal with that and for the teachers. And no parent, I'm sure, wants to see their child getting tranquilized. So you need to understand, like I had asked you earlier, if there are people with special needs around you, you need to be more sensitive. I think most of us have sympathy, we empathize, but we need to take a step further. We need to understand or talk to their parents or their teachers that why so and so person's behavior is like that and how we can help and how we can make their lives better. So once me I had read somewhere about these garments and how a child, a small child, he was always uncomfortable wearing clothes and he used to take them off. So he used to take them off, and everyone was confused that, why such a behavior, especially at public places, not just public places, and specifically at school. So they went to therapy, the parents, and they asked that, why such a behavior? Why is that boy taking off his shirt? Wherever we are going, it's very embarrassing for us, and we are not wanting to go out, and we are very restricted, and that the boy is also restricted at home. We cannot give him the kind of exposure we were thinking of giving him. And then the therapist said that the person has an attention seeking problem. We're talking about a boy with special needs here, and the doctor said that there is, because he is a doctor, of course, we agree that yes, there is an attention seeking problem, and so, there is taking off clothes in a few public places and mostly at school. Now, the problem here is that doctors know less about clothes, and designers know less about, let's say, what the doctors know. So there has to be a marriage of two to get things better here, to get a better product, understand better psychology. And this research has been going on now, that why, is it attention seeking problem, or is there a problem with the fabric of the garment that person is wearing? Because like Varija mentioned, the skin is very sensitive. I'm sure a lot of us know about seamless garments and are more comfortable wearing seamless garments, and there are a lot of tags, and those tags also cause irritability. I am hearing from Varija again. Sorry, guys, just give me a second. She's unable to connect. One second, please. Let me just. What is Varija wanting to tell us? Okay, so as I was telling, that the wash care labels that are there, that the brand labels are there on the garments, they irritate us as well. And if we, as we call ourselves absolutely able, and we also face that problem of being sensitive towards a lot of things. So now here what Baraja is trying to do is she's trying to do research and add curriculum to the designing and various fashion schools so that our students understand what exactly persons with special needs require, what irritates them, what suits them, what is wearable for them, what is easy to wear for them. Of course, we have a lot of parents and a lot of help available, but there is a lot research that has to be done. We have Varija back again, guys. Let me just connect her again. We're so sorry for this.
Are you able to hear me now?
Yes, I am. Welcome
Oh my
back.
God! If there's a will, there is a way. Because in today's, so it's raining and there's a storm outside, and I think Wi-Fi
Yes,
just conked off. So I think there have been a lot of technical glitches, but we are not giving up, right?
we are not
So
giving
I'm
up.
back again. So I'm
So you
I'm
know what?
trying through a system altogether now.
So I had read this somewhere. The determination has no disability.
Absolutely. And I as long as you're not on the ventilator, every damn thing is possible. So we figure out some way or the other, right? As long as
Absolutely.
you're alive. I think that's where Baraja life comes in. So as
Exactly.
alive, every damn thing is possible, right? Yeah. So where were we? Sorry, I left you halfway through.
No worries, no worries. So I was telling them how we were discussing the other day that some boy who used to take off his shirt and the
No, in fact, so I was talking to a occupational therapist, and in fact, it happened
right.
at two different instances. So there was this girl who had a habit of taking off her clothes, and I was sharing this with an occupational therapist, and he turned around and said, so I said, why did she take off? And she would do that in public. So I said, why would anybody do that? So he said, no, no, she had some specific attention seeking problem, and she wouldn't do that at home, but she would do that when she's in a crowd, when she's outside.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when I got in touch with the parents, and I called for certain pictures and visuals of what they were making her wear. So the clothes were very different from what she was wearing at home. So she was wearing pajamas and t-shirts at home. When she was going out, she was wearing very fancy clothes, maybe made of satin or a high level of polyester. Now something as, even Apurva, when we are wearing clothes, and if you're wearing an itchy tag, or if you're wearing a
Right.
dress, the embroidery is sort of troubling you, you are in an absolutely irritable mode. And imagine you still know the cause of your irritation and you can probably express it. A lot of these kids and a lot of these people, they might not have verbal ability to express what is causing that irritation, and they're just taking off their clothes because that's what is irritating. Whereas
Right.
the doctor and the family is thinking that, the reason for that is that it is probably because she has some attention seeking disorder, which is not really the
Hmm.
case.
Right.
So
Right.
that was again something very terrible. So I said, what do you do when when she does something like that? So they said, we make her wear jumpsuits and we zip her from the back so that there's no possibility for her to take off the clothes. So what you're
Hmm.
doing is a miserable situation is being made even more worse,
Worse.
and the entire family is probably not stepping out of home, and they are not taking her out because it is a very embarrassing moment for them, and they probably are completely ignorant what is causing it, right? So when all this actually started happening, I realized that the level of ignorance is not just in India, it is across the world, and there is very little research which is done on the subject. So
Right.
everybody, so the doctors are trying to be, with no offense to everybody, but the doctors are trying to be designers or
Hmm.
solution providers, or the caregivers. No offense again meant, in whatever limited knowledge and ignorance that they can, they are trying their level best. And fashion designers don't look at this segment because fashion designers are always groomed by the colleges, to design for red carpet for Hollywood or Bollywood.
Right.
It's a
Right.
very glamour-stricken business, right?
Right.
So where do we sort of bridge the gap?
Right.
So I think that's where this whole journey culminated.
Right. Right. So, tell me, like I was telling them that, there was hardly any literature when you had
Hmm.
started doing research.
Right.
So, how did you go about that? Maybe I'm sure we have a lot of students with us right now. So, I would want you to, tell them a little how to go about a subject where there is less of research or less of literature.
So what we are doing, so as I said, Apurva, I started approaching various fashion colleges because I am an academician. I'm anyways teaching and deciding curriculums in a lot of these colleges. So I
Right.
started utilizing this as a platform. And as we speak, so last October, we rolled out a research, and I put down an entire research methodology in terms of conducting a research on clothing for persons with disabilities in about close to 28, 29 fashion colleges. Now, thanks to all these fashion colleges who actually came forward out of the regular curriculum and their format of teaching, they tried to accommodate this in the middle of the year, and that's of course an additional burden for the students, but they did that thanks to and I drafted an entire format of the research in terms of going and going to special schools, interviewing these people, observing these people, going and meeting their caretakers, their doctors, occupational therapists, psychiatrists. Try to accumulate all the possible information that is available, that is the primary information, and also whatever has been done and has been put online. So a lot of secondary information, any information that is available online
Right.
or otherwise, and
Right.
collate all of that and try to reach. So the aim was to reach a certain consensus. I know
Hmm.
that each case is very different, but if we
Right.
reach a certain consensus, then it can probably go as a recommendation for parents, let's say, of these children. So
Mm-hmm.
that was the whole idea. But having said that, a lot of brilliant research has come out. You'll be surprised, and there is some very brilliant research happening. So, certain category of blind people can also differentiate between a dark color fabric and a light color fabric, and they're
Oh.
completely blind.
Hmm.
And it's purely with the way the light reflects in on, even when you close your eyes, you
Mm-hmm.
put your hand, you
Right, right,
know the hand is moving, right?
right, right,
So they obviously can't make out the difference between a black and a navy blue, but they can make out the difference between a navy blue and a baby pink.
right.
And they prefer a baby pink, which probably even they don't know.
Mm-hmm.
So those are the kind of things. Now, I haven't done this research. This is a research which is coming from the students. Now, couple of such examples came. I said, let's validate this research. Let's conduct this research with 50 more visually impaired people. And
Right.
then it's a breakthrough research. Then we can go out with a strong recommendation. But somewhere I think the challenge was also that I was single-handedly sort of mentoring these students pan India, so
Right.
taking Skype sessions and trying to address their queries, because even the teachers didn't know much about, it's like a double skill set. So one, you're supposed to know fashion designing, and then you're supposed to know uh, various kind of disabilities. So not everybody has those double skill sets. So they could not mentor a lot of students, which is why I won't say the researchers come out in a very fine-tuned manner, and it's not a very thorough research. But what I'm glad about is that at least we've made a start, and at least there is a will. There's a will by the students. Otherwise we think that they are in this industry purely for the fashion glamour perspective.
Right.
And also the colleges, they're very forthcoming about this responsible education, and um, how to make this better. And some of them even are considering that they might consider this as a elective module, put in their course curriculums.
So congratulations on that. I think that's a great achievement, to get it in the curriculum. And we know how tough and how hard it is to get our curriculum changed here in the country
Absolutely,
that we're
absolutely.
aware
No,
of.
we've made a start. We've made a start. Not single-handedly. There've been a lot of colleges who has stuck through. So initially, I was just doing awareness programs, going to these colleges and
Mm-hmm.
giving yarn, and then I was like, what happens the next year? You know,
Right.
I've told this batch of students what will happen next year. So will
Mm.
I have to keep coming back? And will this knowledge live only as long as Varija Bajaj lives? So I think that was another thing which was eating me up, and I was trying to find a solution to that this should work in an auto mode. Whether
Right.
Varija lives or doesn't live, the life of so many people who are living in so much ignorance, I think that needs to change.
Absolutely, absolutely. Now that you were talking about curriculum and about various institutes, I'm sure the government can bring about a lot of change there. So, how tough was it? Have you approached the government? And if yes, how tough was it? And how was their response?
So surprisingly, I really wanted. I didn't have the inroads, but you'll be surprised, Apurva. I had written a mail to the Ministry of Textiles, and within half an hour, I got a reply. And what a brilliant and forthcoming response I got! And they said that we just don't want to look at you've done such brilliant work. We just don't want to look at introducing this as in as a course in fashion colleges, but
Mm-hmm.
let's plan the entire supply chain. Let's figure it out, how will these clothes be sold. See, now the challenge is not just the research. So this year we'll have about 1,000 students who will at least have an idea about the subject.
Right.
But what happens next?
Hmm.
Are they enrolled in any companies? Are companies, big companies, are they recruiting people with this skill set that, okay, you have an idea about clothing for persons with disabilities? Not quite really. So why would the next batch of students even consider this as a course?
Right.
So my vision and aim was to integrate the entire supply chain, and hopefully post the, so we were supposed to have a meeting, a joint meeting with the ministry on the 23rd, just, post the lockdown was announced. So
Right.
hopefully we'll take it up, and hopefully things will be far more positive, and the collective effort of various stakeholders in the supply chain.
Right. Right. So I think as a stakeholder, the parents play a very important role here. I mean, in your
Yes.
research in the very first steps, I think they must have played a very important role, because I feel that, whatever I've observed, that being a parent anyways is tough, and being a parent for a person with disabilities is anyways more tougher and challenging.
Absolutely. And
So
I think I just happened to open up Pandora's box. I was doing a research on clothing because that was my core area. And
hmm,
I realized that, oh my God, यहाँ तो और बहुत सारी problems हैं. Let's say we create clothes, but where will they buy them?
right,
So there's
exactly.
zero accessibility. How will they go to the malls? How will they
Hmm,
go to the shopping centers? They just can't reach out. So even if you make clothes, even if you have the right solutions, how will they reach out? Number one. Number two, mental health. So the whole family is probably living. A lot has changed in 15 years, but the whole family is probably they are living with that thought which is being grilled by the society. So I decided that I am not going to touch upon these people. I am going to, they're probably 10-12% in that category of disability. But what about the balance 90% who say that, we are, so to say, abled? And they
right,
think that
right,
there's a different breed of people, sorry to say, but they feel that this 10% is a different breed of people and they don't belong to us.
right.
So my mission was to sensitize this balance 90%, and make the environment conducive enough to welcome these people, to
Yeah,
include these people. So even if we are talking, so the fashion designers are not falling in that category really, but they are including them by working upon them.
right,
So yes,
right.
so that is so it was a Pandora's box completely. And I'm sure clothing is just one tip of the iceberg. There's a whole lot that needs to be done for
Right.
this sector.
So, what's your final goal here? What are you? I mean, it's a big question, I think.
So I have many goals, and some people have always, they have warned me in past 1 year that, Varija, you're just going too wide and you're trying to accomplish too many things. But I always believe that as long as you're not on the ventilator, you can do anything. So
Right.
starting from fashion colleges, because that's where my inroads are. I want to introduce this as a compulsory curriculum in fashion colleges, which is well guided wherever the government needs my support in terms of mentoring even the teachers, because the teachers don't know the subject. I'm happy to do so. Once that baton is passed on to the teachers, they can handle it independently. Number one. Number two, make an entire supply chain conducive for these students to be to be placed in these companies, because only then they would be interested on that subject. So whether it's an e-commerce site, whether it's sensitizing the bigger brands, the likes of future groups, and the landmark groups, because the retail has to be conducive enough,
Hmm.
and they also have to adapt to this double skill set, right? Because it's not just retail to a general person. You also have to be sensitive towards the need of that person when you're
Absolutely.
dealing with them,
Absolutely.
right? So it has to be sensitization of the entire supply chain and setting up the entire supply chain. So that's apparels. We're also working in the area of accessibility. The similar format is to introduce accessibility as a curriculum in all the architecture and engineering colleges. So of course, accessibility is a course which is sort of randomly touched upon, but not delved deep into in terms of its innovations. So starting from the education level, communication students, so nobody had
Hmm.
heard of dyslexia before Tare Zameen Pe.
I'm sure.
So the entire film fraternity, and today every mother is paranoid कि मेरा बच्चा उल्टा लिख रहा है.
Hmm.
So that is what that film did, and that is what the film has as an impact on a human mind, in terms of bringing
Right.
about the change. Now, why can't we have, making a short documentary, or, whether it's photography, why can't we touch upon the subject or sensitize communication students at the education level, so that when they professionally pick it up, they know that they have this power to bring about the change and bring about the impact. So yeah, so these are few areas that are my mission and goals for next couple of years.
Right. Well, best of luck with it. And I'm with you.
Thank
That's for
you. And
sure.
I'll keep you. I'll
That's
keep
for sure.
trapping the photo of AI. I'm not going to leave you. And this
Right.
is this is one space that I have zero ego. So even if you don't do it, I will keep knocking your door some 20 times to make sure that my job is done.
Oh, you don't have to worry about that. So, coming to uh, startups, because we at Young Indians, we have everyone from different industries and entrepreneurs and doctors and lawyers and everyone. So, what do you think as entrepreneurs we can do, and how can we contribute?
So interestingly, again on the 1st of April, we were supposed to roll out a competition along with Startup India, and it was supposed to go up on the Startup India website, wherein if you have any products or services to offer to the disability sector.
Mm-hmm.
That was a competition, and we had Startup Buddy as our outreach partner, where we wanted to reach out to all the possible investors and the angel investors and the VCs in the country who were keen to sort of look at the sector. So that was a
Right.
competition that was being rolled out, but of course, because of the lockdown, we've extended this. We've postponed this. But the whole idea is that even as an engineering student, let's say if you're in an IIT and you have a brilliant idea to look at the sector, at the education level, or even as a startup, you start thinking, what is the market? Are people going to buy it? Or even let's say 2 years, 3 years down the line, when I'm looking at funding to angel investors, do they even look at this sector? So
Right.
mostly at that point, such ideas are trashed. So again,
Right.
building up an entire ecosystem of funding in this sector, and looking at this as so we are, when we are talking about disability, we are also talking about you and me, right? Because
Right.
India, youngest nation today, uh, the largest amount of youth is in India, but very few years from now, this youth will become the oldest, right? And
Right.
we are looking at a lot of old age disability coming to us. Are we
Mm.
even prepared infrastructurally to handle, such a thing? We are
Right.
not. So yes, a lot of innovations are required in that space. So yes, so we are looking at a lot of startups and supporting a lot of startups in this space, and anybody who is looking at making lives easy for so many people.
Right. So that's great. And I'm sure all the entrepreneurs are there and even all the students, they know that this space is open to get their brains racking and they can come up with something really
Yes,
great
yes.
which
Even
can
even
change
fashion
people's
design
lives.
students, there are certain level of innovations, interior design students, or if you have any,
Architects.
ideas or any services which is catering to the segment and
Right.
making their life easy.
Right.
There are a whole lot of opportunities that one
Right.
can explore.
And I feel, sensitizing everyone is also a big challenge and will be requiring some service there as well. What do you think about that?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it also covers a lot of mental health. It covers uh, that space of, when we are talking about bipolar, when we are talking about couple of other areas which are not so obvious, so we
Right.
are not
Right.
looking, not just looking at very obvious disabilities. So we
Right.
are also looking at disabilities like mental depression, anxieties, which if they are not curtailed at the right time, they lead to mental disorders.
Right.
So catching them early, I think that is also required. Or sign languages, even
Hmm.
try to introduce them in schools and colleges and workplaces, so that tomorrow if you have to hire somebody who is who cannot speak or who cannot hear, you don't think twice before hiring them, because everybody in your organization would know how to communicate with that person.
Correct.
So
Correct.
yeah, so that is another area that needs to be worked upon.
Right. So, I think we'll ask a few questions from the audience.
Uh-huh.
I'll just see what have they been writing, because they've been really patient with us, and I thank them for that.
Yes, so Vibha says about the clothes for special needs. Oh yes, so so a lot of people feel that, and a lot of parents, they I have come across, they feel that अच्छा कुछ भी पहना देते हैं इनको तो क्या पता चलता है. But let me
Right.
tell you, my daughter is really small. Even if you have a 2-year-old child or a 1-year-old child, if you
Mm-hmm.
make that child wear something new and something
Mm-hmm.
different, the child would know. The child knows that she's wearing her birthday dress, which is
Right, right.
different from,
You're right.
so even if the mental age is 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, and your social age is 12 years, so do not think that it does not matter to them. So
Mm.
what you wear definitely affects their mind and definitely affects their behavior in a very big way.
Right, right.
Yeah.
So Rohit here is saying that how can we help children with special needs in e-learning these days?
So Rohit, there are a lot of oh, these days. So there's a lot of, so yes, we all are currently we are in a situation where we also are, I think as parents we are really struggling with e-learning. But I think otherwise there are a lot of softwares, like Jaws, which if I were to talk about visually impaired, but if it is just about somebody, a hyperactive child or who has slight ADHD, I think they just need to be assisted, and you need to sit through the entire learning process. You can't leave them alone, because I
Yeah.
think they will be very distracted with so much other things that this whole digital world has to offer. So
Right.
that is a challenge for the parents, and I think anyways parents are really struggling currently to deal with this lockdown,
Mm-hmm.
especially for children with special needs. It is very, very difficult for them.
Right. That's there. So Yathan Shur is saying, does clothing increasing the self-esteem and intellect of disabled children, as there is there any scientific study done on it?
So surprisingly, there are no scientific studies that are done. If you were to talk about whatever research that is done online is being done by doctorate students of some college which is focusing on this as their curriculum, or it has been done by parents of the affected child. So if my child is autistic and I think I have certain special needs in terms of clothing, I would make a few clothes which would fit as per his or her needs, and then I'll come across other moms in the similar space, and then I'll probably make a small boutique around it. So this is what has been going on worldwide. If I were to talk about it professionally, see, there's also, it just to say that a child is intellectually deficit, just to say that a child is autistic, it is not that all autistic children, their behavior is similar. Within autism you will find hundreds and thousands of different varieties.
Right.
So it has become extremely difficult for brands to, because it's not a tailoring shop. When we are talking brands, they probably make a universal design which fits all.
Right.
ज्यादा से ज्यादा sizes में differentiation
Mhm.
होता है. So that is what we are trying to achieve through this research, that even if we can reach out to certain consensus. So if we were to say that, okay, a Down syndrome child likes a color pink, then it has to be universal, right? At least 70 to 80% of Down syndrome children should like the color pink. So that
Right.
is what we are trying to do this research with the numbers. So it is a quantitative as well as qualitative research. And if
Yeah.
we can achieve those numbers, even if it's validated to 70% of the sample size, I think
Right.
then we would be in a position to give a strong recommendation.
Right.
Yeah.
So I think then in terms of apparel, I feel that here customization is more required. Like what we talk in normal layman term, that you need to customize the garments, and here, so I think that for almost everyone
So
we have to do that.
So, yes, that's the initial thought, and that is the reason why this, as a business proposal, has never flourished, because there will be very little scalability when there is so much of customization.
Right,
So,
right,
as far as possible, we can, market it, and also the markets. Let's say somebody's a vegetarian, you don't have a, now what should be, now that's a very universal thought, right? But let's say you're
right,
an amputee, you don't have a hand, it's cut here or cut here or cut here. What should be the length of the sleeves? So
right,
slight bit of customization will definitely be required. Even somebody sitting on the wheelchair, they will not be a proportionate body shape. So it's not like a UK 10, 12, 14 size would fit them.
right,
There might be a UK 8 on the top and a UK 14 at the bottom. There
right,
might be an extra small on the top and a large at the bottom, because they're sitting all day, and maybe mobilization is an issue. So they will definitely not fall into a standard body structure. So again, whoever gets into the business of retailing,
mm-hmm.
certain home measurement options would be advisable for them.
Right. Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
So, Monica, here we'll take one more last question. And
Hmm.
so she says, do you think big labels would be willing to venture in this area? Again, fashion, glamorous. So, I think that's what the perception is here.
No, definitely. And I think with the Ministry of Textiles, with the support of Ministry of Textiles, why not? I think it's an untapped market. There is
Right,
zero competition. There are brands. If it is planned well with with the research, education, supply chain, retail, sensitization, advertising,
right, right,
and the perfect of technology, you would be a lot of advantage in
right. So, thank you, Varaja. I think, thank you so
I
much. This was a very informative session for me as well, and I'm sure it was for all the audience. And we
absolute
thank you
pleasure.
so much.
With all the details, we just managed to sail through.
We had to, because we had you on board, so I think we had to.
No, thank you so much. Thank you so much.
And I think to spread more awareness, and we had a lovely audience, a very patient audience, and quite interactive. So I think we'll keep organizing such conversations, and again, keep bothering you and try to
Absolute.
cover more and more on this subject, so that we can actually make that impact which we're looking here to make at Young Indians, and we
Absolute.
might help you out as well. So thank you so
I'll
much.
I'll I'll keep troubling you. Don't worry. I'll keep troubling you for that. Even
Right.
if you don't want to help me, I'll make sure that you help me.
No, no, I'm up for it.
No, thank you so much for the lovely
Thank
session.
you.
It
Thank you.
was
And guys,
lovely to share all this.
right. Thank you so much. And guys, always remember that determination has no disability, like I had mentioned earlier. And we are going to go forward with this and a very positive approach, learning a lot from Varija. And we wish her all the luck. And
Thank you.
thank you so much. Thank you, Varija.
There is a circle, a section that I'm holding 6th of me for students or anybody who wants to technically understand clothing for persons with disabilities. And that's a private webinar, and it's free registration, which is also there on my wall. So if anybody wants to join in, please feel free, and we'll be happy to have a very elaborate knowledge on that.
Right. So I have also already registered because I'm always keen on learning. I think I should never stop learning. So I'll see you there. And I all the students in the audience and anyone who has students around them, please ask them to join us there. It's the career talks. We will share it as well in the chat. And see you soon, guys. Thank you so much. Thank you, Varaja.
Bye bye.
Bye. Thank you, guys. It was lovely having you. And apologies for the glitches again. And see you guys again. Thank you.